education after the Generation Z. And the new age of technology environment also there is another term to this generation, alpha, which is describe better what they are as a digital natives, a coin from Bennett based on a Preskin's definition about it. He perceives students of today as native speakers of digital language, like video games, computers, and the internet. In the same line, we got also a Burnett that states the importance of the using of integrated technology in early childhood education curriculum. There would seem therefore to be an urgent need for those for involved these in educational policies and practices to understand better the possibilities for integrating new technologies within the early literacy provision and gaining for insight about children's experiences and response to such opportunities. In any case, the advantages of multimedia within the process of learning vocabulary of foreign languages, such as Moreno said or states that multimedia has great ventures over any pedagogical resources that are obvious as the combination the audio and video when it comes to teaching specific aspects of the vocabulary. Multimedia is a good option, and another advantage from the perspective of teacher is that you can have a control over the language sample that will be presented to the students and focusing the students in what teacher intends to do. Likewise, as Garcia Gomez and Gutierrez said about the multimedia technology, is a mediation in the classroom has been effective for learning English vocabulary. Some authors like Alipur, Gorgian, and Safari, Erdemir, Moreno, Silverman, and Hines, and Wills have concluded that in addition to a list of increased vocabulary, multimedia resources offered by providing an information to cater to the diverse learning styles of students. And finally, as Jandala said 2017 about the visual learning within the learning processes, that visual learning can help preschoolers to be more imaginative and at the same time to grasp concepts about any topic easier than the text. That is why images are the easiest way for recalling some specific information in the brain. Due to these images were stored directly into the long-term memory. Once again, according to Yandara, the information presented by text, contrary the same information presented by images or pictures, are more easier for learning, and all information transmitted to the brain is in images. 90% if is visual, and opposed to the text, visual are processed 60,000 times faster than the text. Humans are capable of getting the sense of a visual scene in the less than 1% of a second. 40% of the nerve fibers in the eye are linked to the retina. Our brain can see images that last for only 13 milliseconds. Human eye can register 36,000 visual images every hour ends. The early learning programs, which incorporate a suitable visual gain as higher preference over the text only once. Legal framework. Now I'm going to show 7 articles among national and international laws, juridical and political statements which are proper, plus justifying its importance on this inquiry as the following ones: the Common European Framework, Constitución Política de 1991 de Colombia, the Cambridge English Language Test Young Learners Starters, Ley 115 General de Educación de 1994, the English Basic Learning Rights, Código Nacional de Infancia y Adolescencia, and the last one, Desarrollo Infantil y Competencias en la Primera Infancia. The population are students at José María Córdoba Public Schools, located in the south part of Bogota City, in El Tunal neighborhood, integrated by 3 preschool groups. 2 groups were chosen for this inquiry. Both groups are 51 students. Their ages range from 4 to 6 years, and the students have a self-contained teachers methodology. This research is framed within the post-positivism paradigm, also called critical or multiplism, since this is a mixed method study where both quantitative and qualitative information was triangulated. Thus, like Ansari, Panhard, and Shaw said about positivism, tried to find a balance between positivism and interpretivism approaches, and that is why this is an effective for social and educational research, because under this paradigm, data collection tools such as test results, systematic observation, and artifacts constitute the evidence of the results obtained. However, post-positivism not only includes numerical evidence, but also comparative, historical, and phenomenological analysis. Likewise, the post-positivism gives the implementation of different methods and techniques in the research study to ensure the subject is covered by all the possible aspects and perspective points. Then we have the type of study. So I collected evidence from the effects of independent variable, which is the use of multimedia-based lessons, on the cognitive processes of attention and memory of an experimental group, and I compared their learning outcomes against the control group to establish if the independent variable might have a positive impact on the children's cognitive processes of attention and memory when they are learning English. So I also compare the information from the initial stage of the process against the final stage of the implementation in order to establish concrete differences regarding vocabulary retention and long-term learning. Uh, it is also framed in a type of study mixed. So the goal of a mixed research is not to replace quantitative research or qualitative research, but is to use the strengths of both types of inquiry, combining them and trying to minimize their potential weaknesses. Likewise, the mixed methods represent a set of a systematic, empirical, and critical research processes and involve the collection of and sorry the collection and the analysis of qualitative and quantitative data, as well as their integration and joint discussion to make product inferences of all the information collected. It means meta inferences, and achieve a greater understanding of the phenomenon under the study. Thus, this is a mixed study since qualitative and quantitative information was collected and analyzed. Therefore, regarding qualitative information, the results of a language test and a Magallanes test were analyzed. The language test measured the vocabulary recall, and the Magallanes test measured the student's attention span. On the other hand, the qualitative information was also analyzed, including researchers' observation notes and journals. They can be noticed below in this section of these research stages. And the last one, the method experiment cases style. The pure essence of these experiments is within the variables, and if those variables are related between them. So when the independent variable is influenced or changed, the dependent variable in the experiments, and its meaningful relation between variables, and also supported by statistical results and evidence or evidences. The first is that researchers manipulate or systematically vary the level of the independent variable. The different levels of the independent variable are called conditions. And the second fundamental feature of an experiment is that the researcher can control or minimizes the variability in those variables. These other variables are called extraneous variables or factors extra in this research. So the logic is based on this assumption. If the researcher creates two or more highly similar conditions and then manipulates the independent variable to produce just one difference between them. So then any later difference between those conditions must have been caused by the independent variable in this order. So this study corresponds to the state above regarding experimental studies, because here the researcher has one independent variable that is to say, the use of multimedia, and on the other hand, the variable that is to be observed. It means dependent variable is the increase or decrease of attention span about the first variable that is multimedia. So methodology, stage 1, diagnostic or diagnosis. The diagnostic procedure consisted of two steps. The first one, the application of a Magallanes test, and the second one is the application of an English language test in order to know which factors are affecting attention span during English lessons for the two preschool groups of similar English language level. An EMA test, Escala Magallanes Atención Visual, was administered after applying the test. The two groups were selected and divided to participate in this experimental study. A control group, Group A, were taught by implementing flashcards lessons, and the experimental group, Group B, had lessons by implementing multimedia-based lessons or videos. For the second part of the diagnostic procedure, both groups took an English language pre-test called Cambridge Language Assessment Starter Test Young Learners based on reading and writing skills with a total of 25 questions in order to analyze the previous knowledge that preschoolers should have already known on the basic vocabulary according to their level in the Cambridge Language Assessment Starter Test Young Learners and the English Basic Learning Rights. So the vocabulary is based on a starters English level test from a common European framework and the English Basic Learning Rights by the Colombian Education Ministry. The second stage, it was the theoretical foundation or justification that supports the correlation between multimedia and the cognitive processes of attention and memory skills in the alpha generation of preschoolers. For this section, there is this implementation about multimedia-based lessons and flashcards lessons in the experimental group and the control group, respectively. I consulted around 19 authors and its theoretical information for the creation of new categories by checking documents like RISE or in Spanish and English associated with basic mental cognitive operations within the alpha generation learning processes. Regarding the multimedia as a technological tool as part of the teaching learning processes. So the categories was chosen into these 5 concepts. The first one is engaging motivation, the second one is storing vocabulary, the third one is recalling imagery, the fourth one is phonetic vocabulary and the association, and the final is symbolic representation. Those categories allowed to the research conclusions on the correlation between the use of multimedia and the development of a cognitive processes learning in the alpha generation, to find a correlation between the use of multimedia in the alpha generation learning processes. And the last one is the stage 3, or the evidence and comproval. Finally, after the flashcards lessons and multimedia based lessons, implementation between the control and experimental group respectively, it was carried out a post test, which is called Cambridge Language Assessment, started test young learners, as I said before, in order to show a comparison and explanation over the differences, and also the impact on the results over using multimedia based lessons between flashcards lessons related to attention span within a foreign language learning processes of basic vocabulary in preschool level, in order to evaluate whether multimedia based lessons may help preschoolers to increase their attention span during English classes compared to flashcards lessons in the control group. For understanding this better, as you can see in this image, we have three important elements such as digital literacy, neuroeducation, and experimental study. For concluding these 5 categories, as I said before: engaging motivation, storing vocabulary, recalling imagery, and phonetic vocabulary association, and the last one, symbolic representation, are the results about all the connections between the neuroeducation, digital literacy, and this experiment about multimedia based lesson teachings among preschool or alpha generation, that it drives to these new categories or these new findings that is important in this early childhood education. Results. So as you can see in this figure, between those two groups, the control group and experimental group, the control group, the 64% has an adequate level, and in the experimental group it has a 54% of adequate level. But what happens with the other percentage in both groups? So we have in the experimental group a 16% with a deficit level, and on the control group we have a 24% with a deficit level. So in this case, in both groups they have a low and deficit level about the attention spans. It doesn't mean that most of the students that are in the low or deficit level have problems of attention, but it's important that teachers and parents keep or pay attention to these problems.